Your ability to hustle, create, make a living, take care of your family is not something that should be opposed to your faith worldview. And so what we're going to unpack just for a few minutes is this parable. Now remember, on parables, Jesus taught 38 different parables. They're just stories. They were illustrations. It was for his crowds, like our crowds today, to help understand what the point he was trying to get across. Of the 38 parables, 16, overwhelmingly more than any other topic, 16 of the 38 dealt with money. Why? Because Jesus understood at the very crux of our existence as people is our ability to understand, create, give, use wealth in a worldview that is a God view of how we do those things. That's the point behind this parable. So the parable that we shared today is Jesus illustrates it. He says, imagine that God's kind of like this landlord. And he's got these people that work for him, and he's going to go off on a long trip for a long period of time, but he needs to entrust them with his wealth. And so he divides it up, and he says, hey, one guy's going to give you 5 talents. Think of talents as a denomination of value. So one commentary said it'd be like about $1,000. Okay, I'm going to give you 5,000, 5 talents. I'm going to give this other one 2,000. I'm going to give one 1,000. Then he goes on his trip. It's a very short parable, and when he comes back, he gives an account. He says, all right, everybody come back in, bring me what you did, whatever you did with the wealth. 5-talent guy says, man, I immediately invested it. It was blessed, doubled your money. Because remember, it's not their money. He's entrusting it for them to take care of, but it's his money. Doubled it. He says, fantastic, thank you very much, gives him a reward. Second guy, 2 talents. So what'd you do? I took 2 talents, I immediately invested it, I doubled it. 2 became 4, fantastic, you did a good job, reward. Third guy comes, he says, I knew you were a hard egg. I knew you were difficult. I knew that if I lost this, I'd be in trouble, so I buried it. And here's your $1,000 back, here's your 1 talent back. A little dirty, but here it is. In the parable, the landowner or the God scenario, he is not rewarded for hoarding. He's not rewarded for hiding. He's not rewarded for his fear that caused him to bury. He says, wait a minute, you wicked slave, you didn't do anything with what I did. You could have at least put it in a bank, earned a little bit of interest. The balance is the tough part. So as believers, you have some biblical worldview that almost treats wealth as there's something innately evil about it. And so I you know what, the poorer I am, the closer I am to God. Okay. There's got to be a balance in understanding that wealth is just like fire. It is neutral. It is what we do with it. Fire can warm you or consume you. So there's not a lust for money, but there's not a spiritual fear of money. What I want you to see, just for a few minutes, are 3 principles of earning money honestly, dealing with money, what we are to view it as a worldview. Number 1, there will be an account. There will be an audit. God will hold us accountable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who goes on a journey, has called his servants and entrusted the property to them. You and I are entrusted with wealth. We're all entrusted with different amounts because just like the 5-talent guy, the 2-talent, the 1 talent, we have different abilities. We judge ourselves not by what somebody else did, what they did with their bucket, but what do we do with our bucket? It's us. I think there's a temptation, especially in North America in this day, where we don't think God's going to hold us to a high standard of what we do with what he's blessed us with because we don't have a lot. It's like, oh yeah, but I'm not a wealthy person. I'm not one of those people. So I don't feel like the pressure to really make sure that I'm doing something significant with what God's blessed me with. But yet you are. You and I both are. Live your whole working life, never make over the poverty level. You'll have over $500,000 go through your hands. Make $60,000 a year, modest, good job for your working career, $2.5, $3 million go through your hand. Lot will do much, much more than that. I've traveled, not crazy traveled, but I've been rural China and South America and different places. You and I are blessed. Regardless of where you are, you're blessed. was in Ecuador visiting with some folks doing a thing with Compassion International, and it was in a village, and they're basically huts right beside each other, but they were all built where the walls of their little huts did not go all the way to the ground, but they were about a foot off the ground, because when it was rainy season, you had to allow the water to be able to run through the house, otherwise it would destroy the home. And you wore boots during that time of year, because you're going to have a river running through your house. We're wealthy. And God's going to hold us accountable and have an audit with what we did with what we have. Some have a different ability and skill set and are blessed with other things that they're going to be held accountable to. I'm always kind of amazed at those folks that have that innate nature. Ray Kroc was selling milkshake machines, and remember, if you're old enough to remember when they had those milkshake machines that had the spindles, and there'd be several of them on one machine, so you could make multiple milkshakes at the same time at like little diners. And there was this diner out in California that kept buying a bunch of them, and so he went out to make a trip. He's like, why are they buying so many of my milkshake machines? And these two brothers that started a little hamburger stand that was going like crazy, and their last name was McDonald's. And Ray Kroc says, hey, I think I could do something with this. He bought it from the McDonald's brothers and then went on to create what you and I know as worldwide as McDonald's. What I think is hilarious is the brothers lived within eyesight of the first restaurant that they sold to him all those years later. You wonder, as that sign kept changing, billions sold, did they think, maybe we shouldn't have sold? That was Ray Kroc. Phil Knight, fantastic book, started Nike. His book's called Shoe Dog, and it's about selling his shoes from the trunk of a car, these little running shoes, as a track runner from the University of Oregon. It's those that have the 5 talents are held accountable to what you do with that. How did you use what God blessed you with? Joseph was that way in the Old Testament. Joseph has all these bad things happen to him. He has jealous brothers. They sell him into slavery. He ends up in Potiphar's house, but he always kind of rises. And in Potiphar's house, he ends up being such a good manager. Potiphar let him run everything of his household because everything he touched turned to gold. Eventually, he ends up being like the prime minister second in charge of Egypt, helping them through the famine because he was a 5-talent guy. So whether you're a 5-talent, a 2-talent, or a 1-talent. Verse 19, after a long time, the master of the servants returned and settled accounts. Reality, we will be held accountable. We will have an audit. Not to judge us with someone else, but according to us. How'd you do with what you had? Where were you? Here's what I see is 3 kind of benchmarks God will use in evaluating our stewardship. Number 1 is our motivation. What's your motivation when you work? What's your motivation to earn? Verse 28. He who has been stealing, and this is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28. He who has been stealing must steal no longer, but must work, doing something useful with his hands, that he may have something to share with those in need. I believe God has created us to be ambitious. I believe he has created us innately to create, but the motivation to create is a little different than the worldview. It is not to be self-indulgent. It is not just ego gratification. It is so that I can help somebody. I am blessed to create so that I have the ability to help somebody else in their time of need. 2, there's a value, our usefulness. But work, doing something useful with his hands. It's not just enough, do we work? Do you apply yourself? Do you get a job? Do you try to create? Do you make money, take care of your family, be generous with other people? But what are you doing to do that? Because I think that's one of the audit pieces, is the usefulness. National Geographic, Mariana Van Zeller, I believe is her name, has a show called Trafficked. And she goes behind the scenes, scary places all over the world, and at all the things that are illicitly trafficked and people make money on. And there are people that she's interviewing that I'm sure make considerable sums of money, but they're not doing something useful. I mean, they could be everything from drugs to human trafficking to pump and dump Bitcoin schemes that get somebody to do something, invest, and then suddenly that completely goes away, and those people lost their money completely, and they move that from shore to shore to spot so that you can't find them. So yeah, they're working hard. Yeah, they're making money, but it's not useful. And then third, the honesty piece, our diligence and effort. The one talent man buries his talent, and the owner says, "You wicked, lazy slave. Thieves steal, con men deceive, gold diggers dig for money, gamblers risk, some seek frivolous lawsuits." See, here's the point. Get-rich-quick schemes don't require character. I have a friend, Paul. Paul owned a bunch of McDonald's out west. And he told the story that he was visiting one of his stores, and he pulled into the parking lot, and he's not in a McDonald's vehicle. He's not wearing a McDonald's label clothes, so nobody knows who he is. And before he gets out, he notices this lady on the side of the store by the side door. She carefully sits herself down on the ground. She takes her purse and turns it upside down and kind of shakes the stuff out of it, and then sprawls herself out. And when she gets all set up, then she starts yelling that she's had an accident, she's fallen. He's watching her this whole time. He also knows that his cameras at his store are watching her this whole time. So when he gets up and goes to her, she's laying there, "Help, help, help, please call somebody." He said, "I already have, ma'am. I've already called somebody for you." Wasn't the ambulance, it was the police, but he did call somebody for her. It's just like, this is my scam. I know I can do this. I'll lay down. I'll pretend that I was hurt. I'll yell. You'll give me some money to go away. Proverbs 28:19. He who works with the land will have abundant food, but the one who chases fantasies will have his fill of poverty. See, the integrity is the missing ingredient. It says, he who steals must steal no more. How do we steal? I don't think most of us do steal. I think in the strictest sense, we don't think of ourselves as thieves. I do believe that there's a temptation for us to steal from employers based upon productivity and how much energy we actually give it. And it's almost the understanding that if I don't think my job is that great, then I don't really have to work that hard because it's not that much of a job. Instead of, no, you bloom where you're planted, you do the best job wherever you happen to be, and that's how God continues to elevate you and bless you in the future.